So, just to an overview about, grief and really what it is. It is one of the natural emotions, and it's part of the emotion that allows you to say goodbye when you necessarily don't want to say goodbye, or and also to express and to push out sadness when you experience any kind of loss. So it can be ranging from the loss of a loved one all the way to the loss of some coins. Uh, so pretty much it's that the emotion of sadness, of loss, all of that that comes with losing something prematurely or unexpectedly, and those feelings that that are attached to that emotion. And then the most important part about grief is to actually allow yourself to go through that emotional process and kind of sit in that sadness and analyze it and just kind of let it naturally remove itself from you, or to kind of release naturally, as opposed to trying to prematurely get over it or tell yourself that it's not that big of a deal. I shouldn't be feeling sad. I'm not going to let X, Y, and Z get the best of me. That is, releasing, or not even releasing, that is not dealing with it. And what happens when you don't deal with the full process of grief is that it stays in your body, and it causes illness, it causes depression, it could cause anxiety, or, it's just a trickle down effect of things. And the messed up part about it is whatever happened that caused that grief is moved on with his life or passed away or whatever. They're not feeling, or they're not having to deal with the backlash of grief, or of your grief, because you didn't release it properly. So anything you want to add to that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I'll come from a different perspective. I think also grief kind of serves as a reference point for the things that you have overcame. So, like you said, it can range from, a loved one passing away to even like grieving the former you. So like I find myself at times, especially here recently, like just grieving the former Je'Bree, like the things that, I I used to think was okay. I would be like now, questioning and trying to, make sure that that's from, my authentic self or my higher self. But I ain't even gonna lie, ignorance was bliss at one time, and I was happy, so I kind of sometimes, go through that grief process of, shedding my old skin, so to speak, and becoming, the better version or the best version of myself. And then like I said, the second, point, that grief does serve as a reference point for the things that you grew through, not got over, what I'm saying, but I actually grew through, so like I want to say 18 years ago, I lost my dad to, colon cancer. And when I look back, I mean, there are certain things that like I kind of remember about that time, and there's a lot of stuff that, I mean, the brain can only hold so much information that I don't remember. But one thing that does stick out is like when I do go through things, that, like you said, a relationship prematurely ends, or I don't get a job that I applied for, or, something that I have to mourn and grieve, that serves as a reference point of like, dang, well, like, you lost that person and you grieve that, and you were able to go through the grief process and, and heal. So like that, you'll do the same with this, so it's not necessarily like, oh my God, I'm superwoman when it comes to grief, but it does serve as, a reference point.
That life
Um,
goes on and you will be okay
yes,
again.
yes.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you brought up that point, because I feel like I am pretty so-so at processing grief. Um, I am really good about sitting in my pain and not judging it and not feeling like I have to rush the process, only because I know at the end of that pain, it's so much beauty and it's a chance for me to pretty much be reborn and recreate a better and higher version of myself. Because once you get over that pain and over that grief and you do it the right way and you take your time and you let that emotion just naturally flow through you and then go out of you, you come, for me, I've always came back better and stronger and just a newer person. And so I actually um can really I actually really relate and really enjoy, and not enjoy, but appreciate grief just as much as I appreciate joy and happiness. Obviously, joy and happiness feels a lot better, but after the process of grief is done and it's over and it's said with, it's just as amazing of a feeling as joy and as, happiness. So,
I got you. I got you.
hmm
So, oftentimes, like when you hear about, grief, right? The first thing that comes to your mind is mourning or grief of a loved one, right? So, one thing that really really kind of stuck out to me when I was thinking about this topic over the week is, grief of relationship, right? So we oftentimes, for some reason, relationship ends, right? And different people, come to grips with that end in different ways, right? So I didn't realize until, a couple of years ago, that like whenever a relationship ends, especially a romantic relationship, you have to kind of go through the stages of grief, right? And if you don't, you end up, especially all of them, right? You may not actually go through all of them like sequentially, but you will go through all of them. So just going through them and kind of sitting with them and processing and letting your emotions kind of flow through you and flow out of you kind of helps you, I don't know, just kind of put the relationship into perspective. And then also, I don't know, for me, it's kind of been like, in the Matrix, right? Where they hook themselves up to the chair and they automatically like drop into a situation, right? And then they just know what to do when they're in that situation. I find that when I actually like sit in my emotion and process my emotion, like I'm automatically dropped back into that scenario and I can see, the things very, very clearly that like were probably sticking points or probably violations of boundaries or like just, I wouldn't necessarily say red flags, but just things that just weren't really kind of aligned with my authentic self. Um, like immediately, especially like I said, when I sit in whatever stage of grief that I'm actually in when I'm mourning that relationship. So yeah, that's kind of one thing that kind of stuck out to me because I really didn't fathom that concept until, like I said, a couple of years ago. And even one bigger is like, it's wild that we have funerals for people that pass away, right? But we never, I don't know if you do, but I now recently started, having these kind of ceremonies for, either breaking these contracts with people or just, I'm almost tempted to have like little lightweight funerals for things that I'm grieving, and like actually like have a date, on the books, so where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put this to the brown paper bag and light it, or have some kind of like timestamp to where okay, this is when the grieving process starts for this certain incident or this relationship or this person, so I can kind of force myself to process those emotions versus just, I don't know, like unintentionally avoiding it, if that makes sense.
hmm Sorry, I was writing down a point that you made.
I know it's good.
Um,
It's cool.
but I want to go back a bit though, because
Okay.
I want to start at when we're children, and for those children who are not able to process their grief because they're told to suck it up, or it's not a big deal, or get over it, and how from them not learning about grief and how to deal with that emotion and work through that emotion, like how that shows up for them in their adult life. I don't know anyone specifically that was like, or, yeah, I don't know anyone specifically. I've heard, and it's like a big thing now where people are like, yeah, and they will always say men, like men don't know how to, show up in relationships properly because, as a child, they were told that be a man, suck it up. But I don't think that that's just a men's issue. I also think that a lot of women have that same issue where they're not allowed to, express their grief because they get labeled as being overly sensitive or too emotional. And just those, stigmas that are put on women. So, I think, just from being in the world and, being in a relationship, how that showed up for people that I was dating was, I would say, a lack of communication. Um, I've had, relationships where they, spiral out of control because they don't know how to deal with their emotions. Or I know some men that won't allow, and not men, men and women. I have someone really close to me that won't allow people to get close to them or to feel because they're afraid of getting their feelings hurt because they've never been able to process grief and experience grief. So can you think of any time where you've dealt with people who you could tell now looking back in hindsight they wasn't allowed to process grief?
Oh yeah, I would have to say, okay, so starting with myself, right? Um I would say like when my father passed, uh I don't know, it wasn't really anybody there that like I could really identify with and just kind of talk through my emotions with. Even though, like case for example, like, older people, people that were, significantly older than me that I know lost their parent or lost someone, like they just, I don't know, they just didn't really discuss it. They didn't really discuss their
Mm,
feelings because, they weren't really taught to effectively communicate um how they felt when they were processing grief. So I definitely, like, when I showed up in relationship, I feel like I didn't spiral, but I was like overly communicative.
mm,
And, I was always questioning, like, why my partner at the time, like, why could we never really connect? Because it was kind of like, like, I would be talking about things, like, I would get so sad, like, especially when I was very, real close to, like, my dad's passing, right? Let's say, like, the first, like, 2 to 3, no, 2 to 5 years, right? And I would be talking to my partner, and I just be like, dang, like around this time of year, I get just really, really sad. And it lasts for about a good, 3 to 6 months. And, I know that you've never lost a parent, but this is how I feel. And the way that they would show up would not be empathetic. It wouldn't even be sympathetic because they didn't understand. And then, too, like, I don't know. Well, I know that some of them, have lost, loved ones too, like their grandmother or their grandfather or whatever. And they were told, or probably weren't even talked to about, how they were feeling when they lost that person. So they just shut down. Or like I just kind of felt like I was just kind of out on a ledge by myself for a very long time. And I was pretty much, and this may sound grim, but I was pretty much like waiting for other people to experience the same thing that I